You ever have one of those moments where you look at something pure and harmless, and then someone walks up and ruins it with a clipboard? That was my neighborhood in a nutshell. It all started one sunny afternoon when my 7-year-old daughter, Lily, decided to decorate our driveway with sidewalk chalk. She had those big, colorful sticks, pink, blue, yellow, the whole rainbow. She drew flowers, clouds, a smiling sun, and even a wobbly stick figure that was apparently me holding a pizza. By evening, the neighbors' kids had joined in. Suddenly, our little cul-de-sac looked like a miniature art festival. There were hopscotch grids, doodles of dogs, stars, and some questionable but enthusiastic attempts at unicorns. Parents were outside too, laughing, chatting, enjoying the weather. It felt like old-school community fun, something you rarely see anymore. But of course, that kind of happiness is like kryptonite to a certain type of person. And that person was our HOA enforcer, Mr. Daniels. Now, Mr. Daniels was the kind of guy who probably ironed his socks. He walked around with a permanent frown and a measuring tape clipped to his belt because apparently he enjoyed verifying if mailboxes met height standards. The next morning, I was sipping coffee on my porch when I saw him marching down the street like he was inspecting a military base. He stopped in front of my driveway, squinted at the colorful chalk art, and pulled out his phone. I swear, I thought he was about to take a picture because it was cute. But no, he took a picture because he was offended. A few hours later, I got the email. Subject: violation notice, defacement of property. Dear homeowner, it has come to our attention that your driveway has been defaced with unauthorized markings resembling graffiti. Please remove them within 24 hours or face a fine of $50. I actually laughed out loud when I read that. Graffiti. Seriously. My kid's drawing of a smiling pizza slice was now an act of vandalism. So, I did what any normal parent would do. I replied politely. Dear Mr. Daniels, the defacement you are referring to is washable chalk art drawn by neighborhood children. It will naturally fade with rain. Thank you for your concern, he replied within minutes. This is not compliant with community standards. Please ensure your driveway is restored to its original appearance. I stared at my screen for a solid 30 seconds, trying to process the fact that this man actually typed that sentence seriously. That evening, Lily came home from school excited to show her friends a new drawing she had planned, a giant rainbow across all the driveways. But when she stepped outside, the art was gone. Someone had washed it off. She turned to me, confused. Daddy, what happened to the pictures? I clenched my jaw. Someone thought they were too pretty, sweetheart. She frowned, then quietly went inside. That hurt more than the fine ever could have. But I was not about to let it end there. The next day, I called up a few of the parents on our street, the same ones whose kids had drawn with Lily. Every single one of them was furious. Apparently, Mr. Daniels had sent them the same warning email. One dad, Mark, said he called my kid's drawing of a puppy unauthorized street art. What kind of person does that? We all agreed this had gone too far. And when parents unite, you can bet something's about to go down. That weekend, we came up with a plan. Saturday morning, bright and early, everyone came outside. The kids, the parents, even a few grandparents. We each brought a pack of sidewalk chalk, every color imaginable. And together, we started drawing, not just our driveways, the sidewalks, the curbs, the entire cul-de-sac, flowers, hearts, animals, funny faces, rainbows. Someone even wrote, "Welcome to Art Street" in huge bubble letters. It looked amazing, bright, cheerful, full of life. Around noon, right on cue, Mr. Daniels' silver sedan rolled in. The second he turned the corner and saw the street, I swear his soul left his body. He stopped dead in the middle of the road, mouth hanging open, like he had just driven into a Crayola factory explosion. He stepped out slowly, eyes darting around at every colorful inch of chalk. What? What is all this? He sputtered. I smiled. Community spirit. He blinked. This is a clear violation of the HOA's cleanliness and uniformity standards. Oh, we checked, I said. Chalk is temporary, nothing permanent. No rule against fun. The other parents backed me up. Mark even pointed at his driveway and said, "You said graffiti was the issue, right? Then you should know art washes off. But pettiness sticks forever." Even some of the kids were giggling. Mr. Daniels looked like he was about to blow a fuse. He pulled out his phone, probably ready to start snapping evidence. But then something beautiful happened. The rest of the neighbors started coming out of their houses. People who had never joined a single HOA meeting were now standing on their porches, clapping, cheering, filming. Someone shouted, "Let the kids draw," and the whole crowd echoed it. For a second, Mr. Daniels froze. He looked around, completely outnumbered. Then he said through gritted teeth, "You will all be hearing from the HOA board." I just grinned. Oh, I am counting on it. Because what he did not know was the HOA president herself was already watching from across the street, and she was not impressed with his little crusade. Mr. Daniels stormed off that afternoon like a cartoon villain who just realized he could not stop a parade with a rule book. The man literally muttered, "Unbelievable. Total disregard for order." While walking back to his car, I thought that was the end of it. Maybe he would cool off, realize how ridiculous he sounded, and drop it. But nope. Monday morning, I found a bright yellow envelope taped to my front door. Notice of hearing, HOA, board review, property defacement, and public disorder, over chalk drawings. You cannot make this stuff up. Apparently, Mr. Daniels had filed a formal complaint against me and several other parents for encouraging vandalism and setting a bad example for minors. The meeting was scheduled for Wednesday night at the community clubhouse. When I told my wife, she rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might stay that way. "You've got to be kidding me," she said. "What are they going to do? Fine the kids for drawing smiley faces?" I sighed. "I do not know, but I am not letting this slide. He embarrassed our daughter for something beautiful." So, I gathered every parent who was part of Art Street. We agreed to show up together. And not just show up, we would make our case with facts, photos, and even community support. One mom, Jenna, said, "I'll bring a video of the kids drawing. You can literally see how happy everyone was." Mark added, "And I'll print out the HOA's rule book. I'll highlight every page where it does not mention chalk art." By Wednesday, word had spread through the neighborhood. Everyone knew about the chalk controversy. Some people even baked cookies for us to take to the meeting, like we were going to war, but politely. When we walked into the clubhouse, it felt like a courtroom drama waiting to happen. The HOA board sat behind a long table, 3 members in matching polo shirts with the community logo, and right in the middle was Mr. Daniels, looking smug with a stack of papers in front of him, like he was about to expose the Watergate of sidewalk art. The chairwoman, Mrs. Price, cleared her throat. She was a calm, older woman, and honestly, she looked tired already. "Let's begin," she said. "We're here to discuss complaints filed under Section 8, property appearance and defacement." Mr. Daniels stood up dramatically. "Thank you, Madam Chair. As you can see, multiple homeowners have allowed their driveways and sidewalks to be covered with unauthorized chalk markings. This behavior degrades the uniform appearance of our community, and..." I raised my hand. "May I ask something?" He paused, annoyed. "You'll have your turn, sir. Just checking," I said with a smile. "Is this about children drawing flowers, or are we discussing actual defacement?" He glared at me. "It is about rules. Once you start allowing exceptions, you open the door to chaos." That was his favorite word, chaos. Mrs. Price nodded slowly, then turned to me. "All right, Mr. Taylor, you and the others may respond." I stood up, holding my phone. "Thank you. I'd like to show a short video." I pressed play. The room filled with the sounds of kids laughing, parents chatting, and soft chalk scraping on concrete. You could see Lily giggling as she drew a rainbow. You could see neighbors smiling, helping their toddlers doodle. When the video ended, I said, "That's what Mr. Daniels calls chaos. But what I see is community. What I see is children spending time outside, being creative, and connecting with each other instead of staring at screens." Jenna jumped in. "We are not damaging property. Chalk is washable. It's gone after one rainstorm. There's no rule against it." Mark flipped open the HOA handbook dramatically and said, "See, page 17, nothing about chalk, paint, or markings. Page 18, no permanent alterations. Chalk is not permanent." Even a few board members tried to hide their smiles. Mr. Daniels, visibly irritated, said, "Whether it's permanent or not, it looks messy. We're supposed to maintain a certain standard here." I replied calmly, "You mean your standard? Not the community's. Because if you ask around, people loved it." At that moment, I motioned toward the door, and right on cue, about a dozen neighbors walked in, holding handmade signs that said, "Let the kids draw," and chalk does not equal graffiti. Mrs. Price raised her eyebrows, clearly impressed. "I take it these are residents in support. Every single one," I said. "We're not asking for a rule change. We're asking for common sense." The room went silent for a few seconds. You could almost hear Mr. Daniels grinding his teeth. Finally, Mrs. Price sighed. "Mr. Daniels, while I understand your concern about maintaining order, I see no basis in the HOA's regulations for disciplinary action here." He blinked. "So, you're just going to ignore this violation?" "It is not a violation," she said firmly. This is a family community, not a sterile parking lot. The board will not issue any fines or warnings regarding chalk drawings. The parents broke into applause. Some of the kids who had tagged along cheered out loud. Mrs. Price smiled faintly. However, she added, "We do encourage everyone to keep things respectful and non-permitting. Rain should be the only thing washing it away." I nodded. "That sounds fair." Mr. Daniels looked like he was about to protest, but Mrs. Price shot him a look that could cut glass. He sank back into his chair, defeated. As the meeting wrapped up, Mrs. Price leaned toward me and said quietly, "For the record, my grandkids draw chalk murals on my driveway all the time. I think it's wonderful." We walked out of that clubhouse like heroes, leaving a courtroom victory. The kids were skipping ahead, talking about their next masterpiece. That weekend, we threw a chalk festival with the HOA board's official blessing. Families came out from all over the neighborhood. We had music, lemonade, and endless colors. The sidewalks turned into a living gallery of creativity. And guess what? Mr. Daniels still drove by that day. Of course, he slowed down, sighed heavily, and shook his head. But this time, he did not stop. He just kept driving. I leaned against my car, watching Lily draw another rainbow. She looked up and smiled. "Daddy, it's even bigger this time." I grinned. "Yeah, sweetheart. And no one's washing it off." A week after the big chalk victory, the whole neighborhood was buzzing. Kids were still drawing on driveways. Parents were chatting in the streets. And people who had never even spoken before were suddenly friends. It was funny. Something as small as a box of chalk had brought everyone together more than any HOA event ever did. And apparently, that did not go unnoticed. One sunny afternoon, as I was washing my car, Mrs. Price, the HOA chairwoman, stopped by. She smiled warmly, holding a clipboard in her hand. "Mr. Taylor," she said, "I wanted to thank you again for handling last week's meeting so respectfully. You made your point without turning it into a circus." I laughed. "I appreciate that. But honestly, I think the kids did most of the work." She nodded. "That is exactly why I am here. The board discussed everything that happened, and we realized something. We have been too focused on control and not enough on community." That sentence alone was enough to make me blink twice. She continued, "So, we decided to launch a new event next month. Something we are calling Chalk the Block. It will be a community-wide art day where kids and even adults can decorate sidewalks and driveways together. We will supply chalk, snacks, and prizes for the most creative designs." I grinned. "That sounds amazing." "Really?" Mrs. Price chuckled softly. "It was actually one of the board members' ideas. You might be surprised who suggested it." I raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Not Mr. Daniels." She gave a mysterious smile. "You might want to ask him yourself." I looked down the street, and sure enough, there was Mr. Daniels, standing at the end of his driveway with a broom in hand. Except this time, he was not glaring at anyone. He was sweeping chalk dust off the sidewalk, slowly, thoughtfully, and next to him was a little girl drawing a butterfly. I walked over. "Didn't think I would ever see the day," I said, grinning. He looked up, a little embarrassed. "Yeah, well, turns out my granddaughter came to visit. She saw the pictures online from that festival you threw and wanted to do one herself. Hard to say no to that." I smiled. "She is talented. Looks like she is better than all of us." He chuckled awkwardly. "Maybe, and about before. I might have overreacted. I just like things neat, you know? Orderly." I nodded. "I get that. But sometimes a little color does not hurt." He paused for a moment, then said, "I suppose it doesn't. Just tell them not to draw anything on my mailbox. All right?" I laughed. "Deal." For the first time since I had moved into that neighborhood, Mr. Daniels actually smiled. Not the forced, official kind, but a real one. The next few weeks flew by, and when the day of the Chalk the Block event arrived, it felt like the 4th of July for artists. The streets were alive with color. Parents brought folding chairs. Kids were lying on their stomachs sketching cartoon suns and rockets, and even teenagers were getting into it with clever optical illusions and funny messages. The HOA provided free lemonade and popsicles. Mrs. Price wore a t-shirt that said color coordinator. It was pure chaos, the good kind. Then, to everyone's shock, Mr. Daniels showed up again. This time, not with a complaint, but with a camera. He walked around snapping pictures of the drawings, occasionally giving a nod of approval. When someone asked what he was doing, he said, "I am putting together a photo collage for the community newsletter. Thought we could show off a bit." That sentence alone was enough to make half the crowd freeze for a second before bursting into applause. Even Lily, my daughter, ran up to him. "Mr. Daniels, Look, I made a rainbow again. He knelt down, smiling softly. I can see that. And it looks like you got even better. Later that day, when the sun started to set, the whole neighborhood gathered for the awards ceremony. Mrs. Price stood on a small platform, microphone in hand, as everyone clapped and cheered for the kids. She called up Lily and a few others for best color use and most creative design. Each one got a small box of chalk and a ribbon. When Mrs. Price finished, she took a deep breath and said, I just want to say, this event reminded me why we have a community in the first place. It is not about rules. It is about connection. Everyone clapped, and she smiled toward me. Special thanks to Mr. Taylor and his family for standing up kindly for what is right. I gave a little wave, feeling a bit embarrassed but proud. Then she added, and another round of applause for Mr. Daniels, who took all these wonderful photos and helped sponsor the new chalk bins for next year. The crowd gasped and then clapped even louder. Mr. Daniels shrugged, smiling. Well, somebody has to make sure the colors are properly stored. Everyone laughed. That night, as I walked home with Lily, she tugged my hand. Daddy, are we going to do this every year? I looked down at her and smiled. Yeah, sweetheart, every single year, she grinned. Even if Mr. Daniels says no. I chuckled, especially if he says no. We reached our driveway, and Lily looked at her drawing one last time before bedtime. A giant, colorful rainbow stretching across the concrete with the words, Smile More, written underneath. As the streetlights flickered on, the colors glowed faintly under the golden hue. And I realized something. Sometimes, standing up to a rule is not about rebellion. It is about reminding people that joy matters too. So, in the end, the HOA tried to erase our happiness, and instead, they ended up sponsoring it. That is what I call poetic justice, drawn in chalk.